What's up, guys? We've already discussed my top 10 favorite horror movies of 2021, but this was a damn good year for horror. So much so that I'm putting together another top 10 list for you guys. So anyway, let's give you 10 more great horror movies in 2021. Let's go. What's up, guys? I got a few more top 10s coming, starting with this one. And this is the first year I've done this where I've actually given you 10 more great horror movies. Usually I give you one top 10 with some honorable mentions and that's it. I move on to the next thing. But this year, there were so many that I wanted to mention, and even in my comments on my last video, you guys were throwing out so many titles. One specifically that probably would have made the list, and I forgot to put it on my Letterboxd list after I watched it, because that's what I usually do. So anyway, I even have some honorable mentions for you guys, so let's jump right into it. First honorable mention is Empty Man, and I'm putting this on here because this did not come out in 2021. I believe it came out in 2020, but I didn't get to acknowledge it that year, and I don't think I even had the option of seeing the movie until last year. So I usually call that fair game if I can't see the movie until said year. So I'm putting it on this list, and this was probably one of the biggest marketing mistakes of any studio. And I can't really blame the studio. They didn't really know what to do with the movie. I guess it's kind of like Donnie Darko. It's so out of left field and away from everything else that's current and popular that a lot of times the studio doesn't know how to market it. Empty Man is so much more ambitious than you would think it is on the surface. The way it was marketed was kind of like one of these knockoff January horror movies like the Bye-Bye Man or something like that. It's literally called The Empty Man, which sounds bad. But guys, give this movie a chance. It is so much more than that. It's very ambitious and layered. It's one of those horror movies that deals with some really heavy shit too. Next item I'll mention is The Call, and this is the movie, if you want something that feels sort of like a Nightmare on Elm Street, definitely check out this movie, The Call, where you have this group of young participants that are in this house and they basically just have to pick up the phone and call. But the kicker here is that if they make the phone call, they're not going to live. And I think that's the game, is like if you can live, then you get something out of it. I don't know. But Lin Shaye's in this movie. I think it's very well directed. This is the movie that has a really creepy atmosphere to it. And that's because of the lighting and the direction and everything. And it's a creepy movie, actually. And it was, I think, one of the first movies I reviewed in 2021. You know, I guess it's a good case that January can produce some good horror movies. I don't remember if this actually came out in January, but I think that's when I reviewed it. Next honorable mention is Slacks. The premise is really weird. It's these genes that are killing people. You know, you got this department store. The elephant in the room here is consumerism. That's what it's poking fun at. And I think fun is the key word. You know, if you want something that's just fun and outlandish and bonkers, if you want that type of horror, then Slacks is for you. It's a good time. It's not scary at all, but it's got killer genes. What more could you ask for? And then last honorable mention is Lucky. Bree Grant is really making a name for herself, and she directed this movie, and I believe she wrote it too. And this is one of those Groundhog Day type scenarios, but this one has a different twist on it. You know, it's this serial killer that literally kills her every single day. And you can kind of compare that to Happy Death Day, but this one is a completely different animal. And you'll know what I mean when you watch it. And I much prefer it to Happy Death Day. This is much more serious too than that. So if you're looking for something more fun, then yeah, Happy Death Day. But yeah, this one was actually really thought-provoking, and I love where it went in the last act. And it was pretty unpredictable. And I believe this is a Shudder exclusive too, so that one, and Slack. So you're gonna see a few Shudder movies on here. Okay, jumping into the top 10, number 10 is Willys Wonderland. You can't go wrong with Nicolas Cage, even when he doesn't speak. And this is a silly premise. It's kind of like a parole type thing. He basically has to be the janitor of this Willys Wonderland place, kind of like a Chuck E. Cheese, and he fights stuffed animals throughout the whole movie. They're killer, robotic, stuffed animals. Nicolas Cage, what more do you need? Number 9, Don't Breathe 2. I love the first one. Worst trailer marketing ever in terms of spoilers, like they literally gave away the last act. But this was a good movie because it made you kind of question, like, am I supposed to be rooting for him or what's going on here. But if you keep in mind that you're not rooting for the blind man, you're rooting for who he is protecting, who is this innocent young girl. And the daughter Phoenix, played by Madeline Grace, is outstanding in this. You know, she's a showstopper. And of course, Stephen Lang is great as the blind man. But this goes into some directions that you would not expect, especially in the last act. And these villains, you know, when you're dealing with a guy who in the first movie sort of raped a girl, then you want your villains in this movie to be the worst possible villains you could ever imagine. And boy, do they give you that. There's a lot of shitty people in this movie, but you know, if you focus on the young girl, she's your key good guy in the movie, okay? That's the one that you're really rooting for. And the blind man, I'm not saying he redeems himself, but he acknowledges what he is. He knows that he is, in his own mind, not a good guy at all. And I like that they actually deal with that issue, you know, because they know that the audience is going to be wondering, what the hell? Number 8, M. Night Shyamalan's Old. If anything, M. Night always gives you interesting premises and you usually get a unique twist. Although I will say the twist in this movie, probably one of his weakest. I didn't even think it was that memorable. But the premise itself and how they dealt with it, I think worked very well about this movie. And it is very polarizing because there's a big audience that did not like this movie. And I can understand why, but I loved it. Because what would you do if you aged like 50 years in a day? So you have a day to kind of get your life together and deal with some things. You have some family members there with you. And you know, you have a couple scenarios here, like when you're a child and by the time dinner comes, you're 50 years old, that's one thing. But then you got a couple who are having a lot of troubles in their marriage, even considering divorce. Then when they're put in a situation like this, where it doesn't even matter if you're gonna get a divorce because you're gonna die by nightfall anyway. So they're having to deal with that. So that's what I really honed in on with this movie, is characters and how they would deal with this situation. And I found it very interesting. Number 7, Psycho Goreman, probably one of the most unique movies of the year. This is your like Monster Squad, you know, kids having fun with this creature, that type of movie. You know, Goonies, stuff like that. But I had such a great time with Psycho Goreman. Because you have this creature that's like, you know, this intergalactic badass, one of the most dangerous creatures in the universe. And he is completely being owned by this young little girl who is not afraid of him. God knows why, but she's calling the shots. This young girl, Mimi, probably one of the most polarizing characters of the year, because there were a lot of people that's what the sink or swim was with this movie. They hated the movie if they hated her. Or maybe they didn't hate the movie, but they really hated her. I loved Mimi. She was full of spunk and piss and vinegar. And you know what? She was believable because there's a lot of kids like that, especially like middle school age. Have you dealt with middle schoolers before? Because if you've dealt with middle schoolers before, then you probably get what Mimi was, you know? She drives Psycho Goreman crazy, and it's awesome. Man, I tell you, that song is so damn infectious in the movie. I love the hell out of it. I even have the vinyl score. It's the heckin' best. That's what it is. It's the heckin' best. Number 6, Wrong Turn. This was a movie that I saw way back in January. It was weird. They were showing it only one night. And luckily I got to go see it. It surprised me. I have never seen any other Wrong Turn movies outside of the original, the first. What's interesting about this is Alan B. McElroy, who wrote the first, wrote this one. Very strange, and you would think that this is kind of the same type deal with the same writer, but no. They went a different direction with this plot. There were some people even complaining that this should not have been called Wrong Turn, but to me, it's one of those situations where the premise itself is all you need. You know, these characters that take a wrong turn down a wrong path and they end up in deep shit, you know? And if it's mountain men, if it's some kind of cult, to me, that doesn't even matter, because in this movie, you get this freaking cult called The Foundation. This one definitely takes itself pretty seriously, and it goes into some dark places, and I absolutely loved the last act. Hell, probably some of the best end credits you've ever seen, and if you know what I mean by that, it's like you take an end credits scene and then you put something in while the credits are going. It's like, wait, the movie's not over. There's still shit going, but the credits are rolling. Talk about shocking and glorious. And shout out to Damian Matthew, who was actually pretty damn awesome in this. Number 5, Superhost. This was a Shudder movie, and it's kind of this game. You have this couple, they have to stay in this house. It's kind of like an Airbnb, and it's hosted by, you guessed it, what they call a superhost. And so the game is for the host themselves. They're trying to get as many positive reviews as they can. But the problem here is the host is a psychotic maniac. You know, in thrillers and horror movies, we love these types of characters that are so unhinged and completely off their rocker. But what's interesting about this movie too is like the main couple, they have a YouTube channel. And they're trying to up their numbers. And that kind of comes into play too, because one of them is like obsessed with getting more and more hits, more clicks. But meanwhile, they got to deal with this psychotic maniac by the name of Rebecca, played by Gracie Gillum. Probably one of my favorite performances of the year. She's completely insane. I love a good, psychotic, crazy killer, because that's what she is too. She's a killer in this movie. Also, this has Barbara Crampton in it, and she's great. She's got a smaller part, but you might see Barbara Crampton a couple times in this countdown. Number 4, Army of the Dead, Zack Snyder. He made another zombie movie. Dawn of the Dead, the remake, was very good. Actually, you know, it's not as, you know, I mean, what's going to be as good as the original Dawn of the Dead, George Romero, but still very effective. This one is like, what if you take a zombie premise, but you give it like this massive looking budget? This movie looks huge, and you got this big bank robbery going on. The thing I liked about it too is like the zombies, they had very unique characteristics. There's a hierarchy to the whole thing. But I love zombie movies that have, I guess you could say, what I'd call action figure zombies. You could make an action figure out of this zombie because they have a distinct quality about them, kind of like Tarman in Return of the Living Dead. This has some very memorable zombies in it. And it, like I said, it's very epic, very big, very Zack Snyder. Number 3, Till Death with Megan Fox, the return of Megan Fox. It was good to welcome her with open arms back into horror. And this is kind of a light sleeper, smaller scale movie, you know, where she's literally handcuffed to her husband. They're near divorce. And so she wakes up the next day and he's dead. And you know, you got these criminals, I think they're robbers that are in the house. And so she's trying to disconnect herself from her husband. How's that for symbolism? Could they be alluding that like if you're divorced from somebody and you're still, like you still can't get away from them? I don't know. But Megan Fox was great in this, and it was nice to see her back. And it was just, you know, it's just a small, fun little horror movie, little thriller. You know what? She showed up. She came to play, and that's what I liked about Till Death. Because she was in Night Teeth, which you won't see that on here because that one was not good at all, and it's not her fault. She only is in like one scene because I think she was doing a favor for somebody, so that doesn't really count, but Till Death definitely counts. Number 2, Antlers. This is the movie that everybody in my comments kept saying, Antlers, 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 and it would have been in the top 10, but I forgot to freaking put it on my Letterboxd list, and that's what I go off of when I do these lists. But Antlers is easily one of the best movies of the year. And this is a creature feature, but it kind of like The Monster and kind of like The Ritual. You know, you're gonna find similarities to that, but this is like based on the Wendigo, the legend of the Wendigo, and tying in this, you know, family, this brother and sister that are going through this tragedy. And this movie gets dark and it gets deep. It's not a fun horror movie at all, but it's so well directed by Scott Cooper. Scott Cooper deals with characters that are having like a crisis, that are in the midst of crisis. Scott Cooper deals with characters like that the best. Check out Out of the Furnace, another great one. But this one delivers too, especially like with the reveal of the creature in the last act. I mean, this has some pretty graphic, gnarly shit in it. I'm the type of horror fan that I like a buffet. I like some lighter stuff. I like some really heavy stuff. I like some fun action. This is your heavy stuff, you know? A-level type horror, directed very well. Yeah, this is the movie, Antlers. And it is one of the best of the year for sure. And number 1, Jacob's Wife. And I said Barbara Crampton would make another visit on the countdown. Well, here she is, Jacob's Wife. This movie was such a nice surprise. And one thing I love about the vampire premise is that you can just do so many different things with it. You know, you can really play in that sandbox. You kind of have carte blanche. And this one deals with a couple that are, you know, at a point in their marriage, you know, they've been married for like 20, 25 years. You know, when you've been married that long, you have to shake things up a little bit, and it just so happens that Barbara Crampton becomes a vampire, and it works out really great. And this change in her life forces her and her husband to kind of reassess. And I think this is such a unique vampire premise, and I was really just in it for the couple themselves. You know, I really cared about both of them and their marriage. Barbara Crampton actually sent me like the nicest message thanking me for reviewing this movie when I did it in the past, and she really worked her tail off on this, and it really shows. And I had such a blast with this movie. So happy to put it at number 1. So anyway, guys, there you go. There's 10 more great horror movies of 2021. Any that I missed, let me know down in the comments. Be sure to go back and check out my first video that I did. With that and the honorable mentions, you probably have like 30 movies, 20, 25, something like that. But yeah, this was a great year for horror for sure. Also, be sure to come over to Killer Flicks, where we talk horror all day and every day on Fridays. We do free for all Fridays. Follow me at Drumdums on all my socials. Support me on Patreon. Buy me a coffee. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. Have a great day. Drumdum out.